Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and today is a very big day within the world of Destiny 2. Update 2.0 is dropping. The game's actually offline for maintenance right now, but the patch notes are up, so we are going to be covering them over the course of this video. Now, there are a lot of changes coming with Update 2.0. We're going to be going over the majority of the biggest ones in the course of this video. It's just going to be straight patch notes. So you might want to just put this video on as maybe like a miniature podcast just off in the background and listen to some of the big changes that are about to go live in the game. Now, let's move on into some of the big stuff from today. Destiny 2 Update 2.0. The patch notes have dropped, and we're going to go through all of those changes that are going to be coming to the game in just a few hours. Well, just a few hours is the time of this recording. Bungie's got the patch notes loaded up on their website. We'll have a link to that down in the description box below, but we're going to go ahead and go through this entire thing right now. So here we are, Destiny 2 Update 2.0. Let's go ahead and get into these. Now, first things first, we've got ourselves a bit of a service announcement. Destiny 2 Update 2.0 will bring many changes to the Destiny 2 experience in preparation for Forsaken. Some features may not be fully operational until September 4th. This is something they talked about in previous swabs. This is the final week of Season 3. Season 4, the Season of the Outlaw, begins on September 4th, so next week when Forsaken goes live. Let's get into some of the changes. For the player character, in general, subclass screen has been updated in preparation of Forsaken. That's kind of neat. I guess that's just to make room for the extra subclass trees on the description screen for your character subclass. For the weapons and armor, this is going to be some of the big stuff. For exotic armor, with hunters, the Orpheus rig is seeing a change. It no longer grants super energy on bloom and damage sharing. Kind of a big nerf there, makes me a little bit sad. They've raised the base super amount that you receive from tethers to create a more consistent and less exponential experience. And super energy gained is scaled up when more powerful enemies are tethered. When used with Mobius Quiver, grants additional tether shots, but does not grant ability energy on tethering targets. These are some actually large changes to the Orpheus rigs. I was hoping they wouldn't make any change to Orpheus at all. It's easily my favorite hunter exotic for PvE, so seeing a little bit of a nerf there with it no longer granting super energy on bloom and damage sharing, but at the very least they're making it so that when you tether majors and whatnot you get more super energy back. Also an interesting change there with Mobius Quiver, granting you additional tether shots. That's kind of cool. Alright, for the Celestial Nighthawk, we learned a bit more about this last week. It now grants 33% of your super energy back if a target is killed by this shot. Pretty big change. For the Wormhusk Crown, it no longer starts regeneration of health and shields, and instead grants a larger health and shield bump at the beginning of a dodge instead of at an end. So rather than dodging and having that health regenerate all the way back to the max and your shield regenerate all the way back to the max, it just gives you a little bit of just a little bit of the juice when you dodge now, rather than just giving you everything back. This was, of course, a nerf that I think a lot of us saw coming after recent months. Alright, moving on. The Knucklehead Radar. They've gained enhanced radar resolution when crouching. For the Lucky Pants, you've gained extended duration of the illegally modded holster perk. And for Shinobu's Vow, skip grenades return some energy when it damages an enemy. We know that this is going to, basically, if you hit a bunch of enemies with the skip grenade, it'll almost give you your full grenade back. That's a pretty nice change. Alright, for Warlocks, aka the best class. First up, the Stag. Rift Drop from Death now has standard rift duration. That's something that's good. The previous rift did not last very long at all. For the Eye of Another World, ability recharge bonus is increased. For Nezarec Sin, they've increased the duration of abyssal extractors, and rapid kills extend the duration up to 20 seconds. That's great. The ability for Nezarec was one of those ones that it wasn't very pronounced. It didn't last very long. So extending that of up to 20 seconds, not a bad change at all. Now for the Skull of Dire Ahamkara, we learned about this last week. They've increased super energy gained from Nova Bomb kills, and killing higher ranked enemies now rewards more super energy. For the Transversive Steps, you've gained enhanced mobility, and after sprinting for a short time, your currently equipped weapon is automatically reloaded. Finally, for Winter's Guile, they've tuned damage and duration per stack to be more consistent. Alright, finally for Titans, the MK44 stand decides overshield granted by sprinting appears faster, so you don't have to run quite as long before you get that shield. For the Hollow Fire Heart, you get a base cooldown reduction when your super is uncharged in addition to a cooldown reduction when charged. So basically having on Hollow Fire is just going to make all of your abilities come back faster. Not too bad. Helm of Saint 14 now grants allies an overshield for a short duration when passing through Ward of Dawn, and for the Mask of the Quiet One, they've increased energy gained from incoming damage, and while critically wounded, health is granted from kills. Fantastic change for that helmet. Next up, we've got the Crest of Alpha Lupi, where the healing pulse is now more effective. For the Peacekeepers, they've gained increased movement speed when wielding an SMG. Then we've got the Worm God's Caress. They've tuned damage and duration per stack to be more consistent. I wonder exactly what that means. I like the Worm God. You get those melee kills. It's kind of like having the Winter's Guile. I do believe it is for Warlocks, but over there for Titans, you kill things, you get a melee damage bonus. It's really not a bad pair of exotic gauntlets at all. They say that they've tuned things to be a bit more consistent. Well, hopefully that's a good thing for them. Alright, for weapons, they're going to see some pretty big changes coming to these, so they gave us a bit of developer insight. With Forsaken, we've made a major change to the systems, the freedom to slot powerful weapons in either the kinetic slot or energy slot. This fundamental change necessitated a fresh look at a player's damage output in both PvE and PvP. This is, of course, because you guys know the weapon slots are changing. Shotguns and fusion rifles and sniper rifles can be like primaries. They can be kinetic. They can be special weapons. We're getting those back, and then we're going to have heavy weapons be like rockets and the heavier hitting specials like the Whisper of the Worm, the Legend of Acreus, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and see what exactly they've done balance-wise. Primary ammo weapons and special ammo weapons may exist in either the kinetic or energy slot. Heavy ammo weapons can exist only in the power slot. Ammo type and damage type are now fixed attributes on a specific weapon, and ammo distribution models updated entirely to support weapon slot changes. Energy weapons no longer deal bonus damage to active enemy supers. That's a very interesting change. I wonder why they would do that. For the ammo economy, this is what's going to take white ammo boxes. These are the primary ammo weapons. Hand cannons, scout rifles, auto rifles, pulse rifles, sidearms, and submachine guns. For your special ammo weapons, you've got fusion rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles, trace rifles, and single-shot grenade launchers. Finally, for the heavy weapons, we've got drum-loaded grenade launchers. That's stuff like the play of the game, I do believe. Rocket launchers, linear fusion rifles, and swords, finally, with, of course, some of those special outliers we mentioned before, like Whisper of the Worm and Legend of Acreus. The following Year 1 weapons have been moved to the kinetic slot. We've got Balligant, Shepherd's Watch, Hawthorne's Field Forge Shotgun, Alone as a God, the Raid Sniper, Perfect Paradox, the Frigid Jackal, and the Silicon Neuroma. And the following Year 1 weapons are now locked to solar damage. The Ikelos Shotgun as well as the Ikelos Sniper Rifle. We knew those changes were coming. And of course, there's the list of exotics that did not change slot and still use heavy ammo. Tractor Cannon, Legend of Acreus, Darcy, and the Whisper of the Worm. But alright, let's move on to the ammo changes. For primary ammo weapons, they've increased precision damage output of primary ammo weapons, they've increased overall in-air accuracy, yes, and they've decreased body shot damage in PvE. They've also decreased auto rifle damage required to stagger enemies to compensate for reduced body damage. Interesting that they would lower the overall damage on kinetics there, at least for body shots, although I am happy that they've increased precision damage. As always, aim for the head. For special weapons, they've reduced damage output of special ammo weapons, but increased the damage of trace rifles, and trace rifles now disintegrate defeated enemies. Nice little style change there. For heavy weapons, for grenade launchers, they've increased damage and blast radius. Thank you! Definitely something they needed. For linear fusion rifles, they've increased damage, reduced time to charge and fire, and reduced the aim assist. And for swords, they've increased the ammo. They could have stopped right there with increasing ammo because swords, good God, do legendary swords in D2 need a lot of help when it comes to ammo. But we've got increased ammo and increased damage mitigation when guarding. I'll take all of those buffs for swords. I will say I'm a little bit bummed about the decreased damage output for some primary weapons and for special weapons, but some of these other changes are fantastic. I'm glad that trace rifles are getting a buff. I'm glad that swords are definitely getting a big buff. They've needed it for a very, very long time. Alright, let's move on to some of the exotic changes. For exotics, first up we've got the Sleeper Simulant. They fixed an issue where charge time was not displayed properly on the weapon. Magazine size has been increased. Ooh, does that mean we get our 3 shots back? Finally! And they've reduced the base damage of the weapon. I'm guessing to put it more in line with other linear fusions. For Borealis, bonus damage after breaking a shield increased on precision hit, and it still grants bonus damage on body shots. Great, so no nerfs there. For the Prometheus lens, it no longer generates special ammo on kill. Ooh, that is a pretty big nerf to the Prometheus lens. One of the best things about that gun, after it recently got buffed in PvE, was that it's very fun to shoot. And of course, when you kill, it restores its own ammo. So that's going to be a pretty heavy hit to that weapon. For Tractor Cannon, Repulsor Force's Weaken effect now also increases non-void damage by 33%, but no longer stacks with other Weaken effects. Oh, that's a crazy compromise there. So now, all damage is increased by 33% when you hit things with a Tractor Cannon, but it no longer stacks with Shadow Shot and Hammer Strike and stuff like that. the burn strats are going to have to change a little bit. All right, let's move on to some of the perk changes. For explosive payload, they've reduced bonus damage output. Ooh, nerf to that. For ambitious assassin, increased time allotted between kills to earn bonus ammunition. For backup plan, they've decreased the amount of time weapons must be stowed for the perk to become available. This is great. Backup plan is that plan C ability, where when you swap to the fusion, it'll have a shorter charge time. Now they've decreased the amount of time that you have to wait before you can activate that again. That's great. For box breathing, we knew a nerf was coming to this. They've reduced the time required for the perk to activate. They've reduced the precision bonus, but the perk now resets after firing. So 1 buff, 2 nerfs. Which bums me out a little bit, but I guess, with the power of that perk and with the way that weapon slots are changing and whatnot, I shouldn't be too surprised that it saw the kind of nerf that it got. Next up, for high impact reserves, damage bonus granted earlier in the magazine. Then for the Grave Robber perk, it now reloads your entire magazine rather than just a portion, and primary ammo is going to be granted directly to the magazine, while heavy and special ammo is transferred from reserves to magazine. Now what this seems to mean is that when you're activating Grave Robber on a primary weapon, it's going to pull that ammo from thin air. It's not going to deplete your reserves, but it's of course not going to do that for special and heavy weapons because that would be rather broken in PvP. Great change. That actually might make Grave Robber a worthwhile perk, if you can have that almost limitless ammo supply there. That's a great change. Next up for field prep, it increases inventory reserves and increased stow, ready, and reload speeds when crouched. Moving on, we've got auto loading holster. They've reduced the time required for the perk to activate when weapon is stowed, and for opening shot, they've increased fall off range where the weapon does more damage at longer ranges. Next up for auto loading holster, they've reduced the time required for the perk to activate when the weapon is stowed, and for the perk opening shot, they've increased the fall off range where the weapon does more damage at longer ranges. Finally, triple tap seeing a very big change. It grants ammo directly to the magazine and no longer pulls from reserves. That means as long as you're landing those crit shots, you're going to have basically unending ammo. Feels real good. Alright, moving on to the mod changes, starting with 2.0.0.1, which is dropping with Forsaken next week. Year 1 mods can no longer be inserted into gear or weapons. You will no longer be able to insert any mods into Year 1 gear or change the elemental damage type come next week. We knew that change was coming. Moving on from there, we've got some pretty big miscellaneous changes in general. For one, they've increased base Guardian melee damage, and it now takes only 2 melee hits to defeat an enemy Guardian in PvP. They're bringing back the 2 clap from D1. They've also increased the base damage of Seismic Strike, Hammer Strike, and Shield Bash. You can now one-hit shoulder charge people in Crucible. They've also adjusted the active super bonus damage resistance values, and added a timer to the status effect for Healing Rift, Empowering Rift, and Rally Barricade to communicate the time remaining before they expire. Just so you know, you're not the one standing in the Rally Barricade or standing on the Rift as, a big attack is coming in and you can't hear it going away. For grenades, we learned a bit about these in last week's TWAB. For Axion bolts, they've increased base damage. They've also increased the amount of time it takes for the tracking strength to lower, so your grenade should be following people a little bit longer. Flashbangs, incendiary grenades, and storm grenades all saw increased base damage. And for scatter grenades, they've retuned range and fall-off ranges for the detonations for more reliable damage. Finally, for the stickies, magnetic, fusion, and flux grenades, they've increased base damage. Damage is now the same whether a target has been stuck or simply walked over a grenade when detonating. Magnetic grenade now detonates a second time only if it's attached to a target, and the second detonation no longer only occurs on the grenade itself and will now be applied to each individual target hit by the initial detonation. For skip grenades, they've increased the impact damage of each skip drone impact for a higher total potential damage. And finally, for Void Wall, they've increased the damage of the initial Void Wall wave. Next up, we've got some miscellaneous class changes for the 3 main classes. For Hunters, in general, their Marksman's Dodge is now considered a reload. It can interact with Kill Clip, Rat King, and etc. This is fantastic. So any of those perks that activate with reloads, like Kill Clip like they're showing there, it can activate on Dodge now. So you don't have to sit back and actually do the slow reload animation. If you've got a weapon with Kill Clip, you get that kill, you dodge, boom, Kill Clip activates. Great change. For Gunslinger, Practice Makes Perfect now grants super energy on throwing knife kills, and they've increased the duration of all versions of Golden Gun, even the 6-shooter. That's really exciting. Finally, for Night Stalker, once activated, the Shadow Shot Tether will find enemy targets more reliably within its search radius. Not too bad. Next up for Titans, in general, the Rally Barricade no longer requires players to take cover to reload. It now feeds ammo directly into your magazine over time. Hallelujah, fantastic change. You can just sit there and crouch and continually get your ammo back. For the Striker, with terminal velocity enabled, the opening Fists of Havoc slam no longer leaves a lingering damage area. They've also lowered the health threshold for triggering knockout so that it triggers sooner to keep up with the PvP lethality changes. And finally, they've increased the lunge range of the Fist of Havoc melee attack. For Sunbreaker, Sol Invictus will now trigger on burn kills, and for Sentinel, they've increased the Ward of Dawn health significantly. Yes, very happy to hear that. They've also increased the amount of health provided by the Ward of Dawn overshield. For the Sentinel Shield Super, they've increased the Shield Throw projectile speed. Shield Throw no longer loses damage after bouncing or ricocheting off targets. It's got a faster attack animation for grounded melee attacks, and they've increased Sentinel Super damage in PvE. With the Doomfang Pauldrons basically allowing you to keep your super up 24/7 in some areas, having increased Sentinel damage is going to be fantastic. Alright, moving on to Warlocks. In general, they've increased Healing Rift effectiveness. Empowering Rift now increases precision damage, which previously bonus damage was capped at the weapon's precision damage in PvP, which, yay! More precision damage. More of a reason to actually use Empowering Rift in PvP. For Stormcaller, they've increased the PvP damage of Stormtrance. Thank you. They've also increased Arc Soul's projectile speed. For Dawnblade, they've increased Dawnblade projectile speed and base tracking strength. Also, very much thank you. And for Voidwalker, they've significantly reduced the length of time that Blink disables your radar and HUD. We actually got to see a little bit of that in the PvP livestream that Bungie put off a while back. Also, the perk Chaos Accelerant no longer costs super energy to use, and they've increased the bonus damage granted by Chaos Accelerant for each Voidwalker grenade. Alright, we're getting into this thing. Next up is some PvE changes. First up, we've got the new Daily Heroic Story playlist, where Year 1 meditations have been retired and replaced with a Heroic Story playlist. These will share modifiers with Heroic Adventures and Strikes, and Forsaken campaign missions will be featured at 500 power, while Year 1 campaign missions will be featured at 200 power. Your destinations are also going to be seeing some changes. For one, wanted escapees from the Prison of Elders now roam the open world. However, they will not drop rewards until September 4th, 2018. That's next week. They've also increased the difficulty of Lost Sectors, and for an example, they've given EDZ Lost Sectors a power level of 240 now, so those enemies will be a little bit stronger. Next up, we've got some changes coming to adventures. First off, replayable adventures have been removed from destination vendors. That's kind of interesting. Heroic adventures have been added to all destinations, and destinations without heroic adventures before Forsaken will have them available during their Flashpoint weeks. A random heroic adventure will be available each day, and Mercury and Mars heroic adventures are, for the most part, unchanged. Finally, heroic adventures will share similar modifiers with daily heroics and strikes. Hopefully some of those modifiers from heroic adventures make their way into the strike playlist, like Elementalist. It's a great one that I always question why it's only in the heroic adventure playlist. Weird. Alright, let's move on to some of the changes coming to strikes. First up, Vanguard Strikes. The Heroic Strike playlist has been retired for all players and replaced with a single content-appropriate playlist. We've got Legacy Strikes, which is a strike playlist that matches the Legacy playlist that's currently available in Year 1. Recommended power is 200, and it will have modifiers. Fantastic. And then the Forsaken playlist, which is a strike playlist that has 3 difficulties to select from. The first is recommended power 300, which is not available when your level is 40 power or higher. Then power level 400, which is not available when your power again is 40 levels or higher. So if you're 441, you're not going to have access to the 400 playlist. And then finally, power level 500, which is always going to be available. These also will have modifiers. Very interesting change for the strike playlist. For the Nightfall, they've retired the Prestige difficulty. They've also increased the base difficulty for Nightfall activities, and players can choose one of 3 Nightfall strikes each week. Players may select only the strikes for which they own the appropriate expansions. And finally, Legacy players will still be able to enable modifiers via the challenge card, but scoring will be disabled in the 270 power Nightfall. Lastly, escapees from the Prison of Elders now appear in strikes, lost sectors, and public areas. I love that change. You guys know I loved it when the Blades of Crota would start roaming around in the world space before the Dark Below came out, and then they did the same thing with the House of Wolves. The Wolves are prowling. It felt really good to have this sort of thing back in D2. But enough about all that. Let's move into some of the other changes. We got some miscellaneous stuff like tower changes. They've increased the vault size to 500 slots, and players can now dismantle shaders in stacks of 5 in Master Rahul's vendor screen. Which is great. You can mass delete shaders at least in stacks of 5. I kind of wish it was more than that, because for some of these unwanted shaders, I've got hundreds upon hundreds of them, so oof, doesn't feel too good. And then, of course, some sad news. Arcade 6 has left the tower to investigate disturbances in the reef. No, tell him to come back. So they've removed treasure maps and scout reports for the time being. But alright, there we go, Guardians. That's it for some of the biggest changes that have come in patch update 2.0. These are a lot of the things you'll be able to experience later on today. Who knows, by the time you're watching this video, the game might already be back up and live, allowing you to enjoy some of the big changes coming to Destiny 2. But that is enough for me going through these patch notes. Those are some of the biggest changes. Those are my thoughts on them. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. Are you excited to jump back into Destiny 2 in this new world environment? I know I'm going to be going and testing a bunch of different weapon slot changes and how exactly that makes the game feel and play. Can't wait. But that's going to be it for this one, Guardians. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest D2 news that's coming out. We are 1 week away from the official drop of Forsaken, and it is going to be a wild ride every day as we move forward, so make sure you're staying tuned. But alright, I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.